right. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Grab Your Torch with Caleb and Joel. We are back to recap kind of a boring episode of Survivor 48, episode 10. What were your thoughts on the episode, Joel?
Uh, I think it had to happen. You had to get Star out eventually, and I think her episode was always going to be boring. And I think almost like she's such a bombastic character that kind of subdued her edit because of how boring the exit was, maybe. Like that's
Yeah,
the only reason I can see it happening because she made Final Eight. Like that's pretty far in the game, and she still didn't get a
right.
great edit. But the best way I can probably describe this is like I think 46 had like this boring pre-merge and like a very explosive merge. We had a very explosive pre-merge this season and like we haven't had much of the merge. I'm hopeful. I keep saying it. I think it might be March Madness. Like the final like six, 5, and 4 might be crazy, but like I don't know if that's enough to
That's two
redeem
episodes, though.
that.
We're down to three
Yeah.
more. There has to be a lot left
We
in the
because
tank.
we haven't really gotten to like the moment of the season. Maybe like Kyle's idol is the moment, but that's a pretty early moment. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it just was not very. I don't know. There hasn't been very dynamic gameplay outside of maybe the David vote.
Not really at all. And I would argue to say that even the David vote wasn't very dynamic either. I feel
No.
like that was just like the best decision for everyone in the group to do that. And then for this week, I don't know. There's just a lot of cringe moments too. It was just kind of like, ugh, kind of hard to watch. Like the ch fried chicken and waffles chant was kind of crazy that they included that in there.
It was
Oh,
goofy.
what? Yeah, it was goofy.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this episode was like I don't know. We got to see like Kyle kind of talk like he wins reward. He talks about like specifically like who he left back there. Like he was talking about strategic decisions, which I think was like an overall this has been like a okay, good episode for Kyle.
Yeah.
Um,
I
but
mean, I just feel like everyone's playing so scared. Including Joe and Eva. They're just trying to insulate themselves so much. Um, I don't know. It's just we saw that mostly from Mitch tonight. I think he after Joe wins immunity, like the plan just kind of fizzles out, and it kind of rests on everyone being involved. But the best plan that they have is doing a 4-4 tie, and
and I kind of like
that's not
let
really a
that
move either. Yeah, it's like, what were you actually planning to do? They Kyle didn't want to get his hands dirty either, which I've been saying all along that's probably been smart for him to do is to try to let Camille do the dirty work. But at this point in the game, I think Kyle just needs to, buckle his seatbelt, start working around some stuff, trying to cultivate the final three that he wants. Because we're down to seven now. He's got to make sure that he has, two people he can go to the end with and be confident to win against. And you're running out of time to take people out like Eva. She has two um uh advantages, whatever you call it. She has an advantage and an idol. She'll be able to save herself twice. And then that means there's pretty much just one way to vote, one uh episode that you could vote her out in besides, fire making. So I don't know. They're kind of not prepared for that if Eva is, going home soon. I don't know.
yeah, and I think I don't know. I think this episode kind of showed that like I think there are we kind of talked about it a little with Camilla is that like I think Camilla's a better player than the game she is playing. And I don't think it's her fault. Again, I think it's the cast. And I think that it is for like a lot of players on this season. I think in most seasons, Mary would be doing really well. I think Kyle's doing as well as he could be. I would argue he's probably playing the best right now. Shaheen's also kind of molded in, but there's also like the gameplay is very stifled. And I think it's a lot part because like Joe and Eva are like at the end of like they're the core. They kind of set the morals, they set the principles of the season. They're like, we're playing with honor and we're
Right.
playing like by the books, which from their point of view, like, I mean, it's worked out. They made it this far, but like, at some point you have to blindside someone in Survivor. Like you have to be the villain to someone, and
Right.
they're already the villain to David. So you might as well just keep going with it.
Right. And I'd say it's one of the cool parts of Survivor is like I feel like every season has like their own like internal culture, how they think the game should be run, whatever, their own ethos of Survivor and how it should be played. And I think that's really fun to watch. But with the like the honor integrity aspect of it, when Survivor's a game of deception, like on its face, and when people kind of try to play straightforward. I mean, I get it for Joe and Eva. It's the best move for them. Like that's probably the best chance they have of winning. So you can't really fault them for that. But, for these other players that want to get to the end, they don't have to subscribe to Joe and Eva's ethos. Like they can go and do their own thing and take them out and create their own culture and of the Survivor game and influence the jury in that way too. And I don't think it's too late for that either. And so it's really up to everyone else to help make the season more interesting. This has been, I would say, it kind of peaked early on with that, Kyle Idle play, and it's been going downhills ever since. Like I've been trying to it's been I feel like trying to keep it positive for a while, but this week was definitely just really hard to get through. And I mean, it was telegraphed as soon as, Joe got immunity. It's like, why are we spending so much time figuring out if it's Star or Mary? We don't care about either of them. Like, I get it, like some people do, just because whatever, people have preferences, but it's like we know neither of them are going to win. So why are we focusing all this time on that?
I agree. And we are really narrowing it down to like who's gonna win at this point. And I think this was like specifically a bad episode for Mitch. Mitch, like to me, I find it very annoying. But I guess I'm not starving on an island. But like people when they're like, "Oh, they didn't take me on reward," like I guess I don't have trust with them. It's like Mitch, you just went on reward.
Right.
You know, what I mean? Like Kyle's obviously like picking people who've been on reward, and I get that. But also, it was like not because it was like a strategic decision. He left Joe there with like the wolves. And like I think that was a great move for Kyle overall. And even though Joe was like upset either, as well, he like gave Kyle credit. He was like, the more I thought about it, it made sense. He let me babysit these people.
Right.
And so, I think Mitch had a rough one because he'd been talking this whole time, bruh, the whole time about I need to play aggressive. I need to make my move. And this was it. He was the linchpin to get the 4-4. Now, do I think the 4-4 would have worked? I hot take, I don't think so. First off, I don't think obviously like Joe, even Shaheen, I doubt flip. It would take Kyle, and I think Kyle's more likely to just be like, um, everyone, let's talk about this and like let's be rational and just like take out even. I think it wouldn't have been Joe, is what I'm saying. But
Yeah, that's fair. I do think for next week, though, I do think Shaheen is someone that would be willing to flip.
mhm.
And I do believe that with Shaheen already being someone, Camilla being someone willing to flip, obviously, because she's not really in the core four. And I think that means that Kyle can join in on that so he doesn't feel like he's directly getting his hands dirty. He's not the only person that's flipping. So I think that could be, an important move for him is just to go along with that. He doesn't necessarily have to create it, but kind of say, "Hey, Camilla, you start, spreading this and trying to create this flip to happen." I don't know. We'll see if that works. I feel like we're kind of bouncing balls off the wall trying to figure out how to make the season better, but it's
Yeah,
really up to the players. I hope they give us something, exciting to root for or to just watch in the next few weeks. But we'll just see. I don't know.
yeah. I think moving forward, obviously, I think this immunity kind of was like it was like I thought it was pretty tense because I was like, oh, like this kind of determines how good this episode is gonna be. And obviously Joe wins it, three immunities. But I will say for myself, I have kind of like called it that like Eva and Joe are kind of ping ponging. You know what I mean? Like if either of them win immunity, like they're not getting targeted.
Yeah,
And I think next episode, I like in my head, I'm like, yeah, this should be Joe or Eva. This is like I think Final Seven is like the golden opportunity at any game to take out someone. The numbers are technically always in your favor, especially if you're Kyle and Camilla. You just need two people. So like I think that, but also remember, Eva's leaving tribal. Like Final Seven, this is the last time she can use her safety without power. I don't see a world where she doesn't use it. And if either of them win immunity, the other one's using it. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And I don't. I think one of them wins immunity. Surely, like they're just like they're so hot right now,
Right.
and I think this season's just like really been pointing towards like those two making it like to
Hmm.
finale. And I think that's the only way they make it through the next episode is like through that. So I'll give myself credit for at least calling that. I think Eva is probably in a really good spot to win. She really is like almost letting Joe take all the heat while she's just, she's also making the moves and everything, is just not getting the heat for it.
Right.
And I think that's been pretty good for her.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But it's just looking back on the season as a whole, like these last six votes have all been telegraphed pretty boring boots. Like the episodes themselves haven't been bad, but like if you look at it, we had Charity, Say, Cedric, Chrissy, and then David last week, a little bit more interesting. And then Star this week. And if we get Mary getting voted out next week, I'm not sure what can redeem the season at this point.
Yeah.
Um,
You'd have to go to Rocks at Final Six or something.
yeah, whatever. We'll see, but I'm still not gonna, throw it all the way in the trash. Hopefully the last couple episodes can just finish strong and then they can land the plane. Just because it'll be more interesting to watch, as well as we don't have to look at the season to be so bad, just like in the future. But I do think like it's actively dropping in my like rankings right now. Like I had it kind of in a middle spot, but now it's probably in the lower half. So I'm not really sure. Um,
Yeah. I would have to think about it more. I think that three
like of the
episode
new
stretch
era.
though. Oh yeah. Of that 3 episode stretch was just like probably the best stretch of arguably Survivor. Like maybe not heroes versus villains, but it's definitely like up there and like episode by episode by episode. Like
Which three?
the what is it? It was like Thomas Boot, Kyle Idle, and then I
Well,
think the
Kyle Otto is the Thomas boot.
oh sorry. I meant Justin, Idle, and then I think it was like what is it? The
Bianca boot.
Bianca.
I don't know. I thought it was fine, not amazing. I don't know.
I thought it was great.
Yeah.
But I think moving forward in this season, like I think we're kind of it's been very old school in a way that we don't really like. Which like I know Survivor fans really are clamoring for old school, and I like old school a lot, but this is kind of the things you get with old school as well. Especially when I don't know why no one, I guess no one found the merge idol, and is there a merge idol? I don't know, but we seen with
That's
like idol.
that's not been a topic of conversation. Yeah, we haven't seen or heard of an idol for a long time.
I don't know if they have time to look for one.
Exactly. I do think I would push back a little bit on that. Like with old school, we have a lot of interesting stuff going on. It's not just a pagonging all the time. We have people wanting to flip on each other and whatnot, go across tribe lines, try to figure out what that would look like. With this, I feel like it's just so stick to the status quo. We're not going to budge, and that's
Hmm.
just really hard from a viewer perspective to like enjoy. And I'm not going to put the blame on any player in particular, but I think as a collective unit, with how everyone's playing so conservative and keeping their cards close to the chest, like I think that's gonna end up not being as entertaining to watch. We've seen, back to back, 46, 45, I include in that as well as an interesting season, but especially 46 and 47 with, 46 just being absolutely chaotic, everything going left, right, and center, never being able to know what's going to happen, as well as 47 with we just had really great dynamic gameplay and it changed every week. Like going into Final Seven this week, we have Operation Italy from last season. I
Yeah,
there's 0% chance that they would like anyone would pull off any move similar to like Operation Italy this season,
I
just
agree.
because like everyone's, well, what do I do now?
Yeah.
Everyone's playing scared. They're not willing to play Survivor hard. I mean, they're still playing the game in their own way. It's working for Joe and Eva, but
Mhm.
if these people don't realize that they're running the show, and I would include, Kyle and Shaheen on that, like they need to be able to make their own move. I'm not sure who would win, like they're because none of them have distinguished themselves as someone who would win in that situation. And so if you don't do that, it's kind of just be a toss up, with the jury.
I agree, and I think we're in a spot now that when you look at like every final three combination, like a lot of their best opportunity is taking Mitch and Mary to the end.
Right.
And if you're like someone, I would argue like Shaheen or like Eva or like really a lot of people, I would just take out Mitch just because like Mary's has one solid vote in David. And honestly, if you're Joe, I would take Mary just because like you're never getting his vote to begin with. But I think like taking someone out like that could like ensure like this final tribal could have like some fireworks to it. Um, but we've seen too many seasons where like, these goats get to the end and then it's a just a wash. And so I'm a little worried about that, but I don't know. I don't think there's any combination that I think would be like so good. Maybe like Joe versus Shaheen versus Kyle, or like Kyle and Camilla versus Joe, something like that. But I don't see a world where any of that like reasonably happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, but yeah, it's
I
just
don't,
one of those episodes.
just one of those episodes. I don't know how much I else have to add to, this
What
week.
were your thoughts on Star on this season, and should she return? I know she has a huge fandom online.
Right. I mean, I do think, Star's super entertaining. She's criminally under-edited. We should have gotten a lot more of her, but I don't think I've seen enough for to warrant a Star return. Like I'd still enjoy it if they actually showed her, but if they're gonna give her like this edit like that they have, um I just feel like the edit has been a lot more telegraphed this season too. I just feel like it's so much more straightforward. Like we have all the people with the least amount of screen time, going home faster than the people
What's the
like with the
most?
most screen time, with the exception of Say. But like other than that, it's been I feel like pretty telegraphed of like who's going home because like we know okay, Chrissy hasn't had a lot of content. If she it doesn't go home this week, she's probably going to make it to the final three and be a 0 vote finalist. Same thing with Star. It's like, okay, she's probably going to go home this week. If she doesn't, then she's probably going to be a 0 vote finalist at the end. We have that straightforward of a vote. If it was up to me as an editor, I would want to make sure that every character was like equally important and interesting in the story of Survivor, like of the season, so that when it came down to them being voted out, people were attached to that, and that was a more dramatic moment. But we haven't had that with the last few votes.
Yeah, I agree. I think Star is diabolically under-edited. I think we are Loki a little robbed of like an all-time character, and maybe not an all-time, but like a really good one. Like
Yeah,
every confessional from her was gold.
it was so funny. I was like laughing a bunch.
I know, and in a way, it feels a little like Marianne-ish, where like Marianne, like because she got a winner's edit, she didn't get a character edit. You know what I mean? So like
Sure.
she got moments, but like a lot of it was like her being strategic. And I think if Star won, it would have been like something like that. Except instead of like we just got to see Star being goofy, Star being out of like the loop, learning how to swim, which was funny and great. But I agree. I don't think there's really a spot for her on like Survivor 50 or maybe New Era's All Stars, because I think they like putting kind of like random people in just to like spice up and make sure it's not just game body. But I think Star did like interesting stuff with like the Public Idol. I think that was a good move. I think that move like definitely changed the course of her game. Where I think she was going out immediately to, making it the final eight, which I think was pretty good. But overall, I think Star was under edited. I have zero idea who she votes for. I don't think she even voted correctly very much in this game. So, it
Yeah,
had to happen.
I just feel like for me, like she was just kind of there, but when they showed her, like she was really funny and entertaining. So I wish we got to see more of her, but we didn't get enough for her for me to like have a vested interest in her for a return or anything like that. And not to say that she doesn't really have much of a game. I'm just saying like I don't know if I would pick her on a cast over a bunch of other players that we've seen that I could probably more guarantee that they would be more fun to watch as
Yeah,
well. So
I agree. So, what's your predictions for next week?
next week, it's either going to be the straightforward Mary's going to go home, or they're going to take a shot at Joe and Eva. Like, there's no way that Kyle or Cheyenne, Camilla, um, I would also I think like those three are all safe. And then Joe or Eva, and then I do think Mary's probably most on the bottom, but Mitch could also get take a hit as well. So I don't know. We'll see. But I'd say one out of those four, which is pretty vague. But if I had to pick directly, I'd say Joe's just because Eva's gonna just play her, safety without power and dip probably. And, it's probably gonna come down to Joe winning immunity. And if they don't, they're gonna be like, oh, la-di-da, we can't do anything. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think it's more likely Mary, um, because I think this season's gonna boil down to Joe giving up his game for Eva. I think at some point, like that has to get paid off,
But would
and
that be interesting to watch?
I think it's more interesting than watching just Joe get voted out. You know what I mean? Like watching like
I disagree to that.
I think if like next episode like Joe gets voted out, it is literally going to be like a 6-1 vote.
I mean, not necessarily.
Do you not think? Do you think Eva leaves and it's not going to just be like Shaheen, Kyle, everyone just pile on?
I mean, that's definitely potential, but I don't know. I think it'd still be interesting to watch. I don't care like the margins of the vote. It'd still
Yeah.
be an interesting blindside, and I still think it would be difficult to pull off. And without Joe getting a red flag raised and not saying, "Hey, Eva, please give me your idol so I can survive."
Yeah. Honestly, probably the most interesting thing is that happening and him idling. Like, I think something like that could be interesting just
Yeah,
because I think auto plays are fun. But I think most likely it'll be Mary. I'm gonna stay on it till they prove me wrong. I think Eva or Joe are gonna win immunity. The other person's gonna get the advantage. They're gonna leave, and then they're gonna be forced to take out Mary or Mitch. I think Mitch is in it for the long haul, though.
yeah,
I think so. The Mary because I think Joe kind of talked about it like with Mary. Mary didn't seem like all that jazzed about jury management. I think that's kind of setting up a like, well, Mary's gonna be on the jury, and she probably won't vote for Joe. So hey, he might make it, but who knows at this rate?
exactly. Who really knows?
Yeah, but anyways,
I don't know if I have anything else to add. I hope that we get, just a more interesting trajectory to the episode. Sorry for just kind of a little bit of a downer week, but it's kind of given, what we're given. Trying to make the most out of it. I hope that we get to see more interesting dynamics moving forward. I just hopefully people will play up to their strengths as well. And then also to go off of that, um, I hope that 49 could be interesting as well, and not be such a.
9.
I hope 49 doesn't continue the down trajectory. Then hopefully we get some, positive vibes there. Hope their cast is playing out of their mind right now as we speak. And then with season 50 on the horizon, I hope we have a really good cast for that as well. And I hope that they're all here to play. So I hope we get to see all those things coming soon.
Exactly.
All right. Well, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're watching on YouTube. And please listen wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be there every week. And also join us probably about midway this week. I would say probably Saturday or Sunday for our top seven winner rankings. We'll just kind of go through a little bit more detail who we think is going to win. They've changed a lot since we did it a couple weeks ago. So be sure to check that out.
Exactly.
All right. See y'all later.
See ya.